Destiny 2 Nightfall Strikes are a special, ultra-hard version of the strike mode, which rotate to a new strike from the roster each week. They're no easy feat and require a fair bit of work just to unlock in the first place, but once you do, the rewards can be well worth the effort, and that's leaving the sheer sense of satisfaction aside. With that in mind, here we'll be explaining how to unlock Nightfalls and our best Nightfall tips for completing them so far. What are Nightfalls? Destiny 2 Nightfalls, Prestige Nightfalls, and Nightfall rewards explained. Nightfalls, as we mentioned above, are essentially a hardcore version of a specific strike. Each week, a new strike from the roster will be picked out to be the Nightfall for the next 7 days, adding considerably tougher versions enemies and a greater number of high-ranking foes like captains and shielded enemies too. Along with that general spike in difficulty, Nightfalls also now have 2 new features that they didn't back in Destiny 1, a timer, which ticks down from 15 minutes and means you fail when it hits 0, and a rotating modifier. Each week, there's a new modifier that, used correctly, could make things significantly easier for you, and a new method, or Timewarp, for helping add extra time back onto the ticking clock. Weekly Nightfall. Nightfall rewards. Nightfall Strikes offer some of the most highly rated rewards in-game. Each week there will be a milestone tasking you with completing the latest Nightfall, which grants you powerful gear, otherwise known as a luminous engram, with a high chance of containing exotic and legendary loot. Otherwise, Nightfalls and Prestige Nightfalls award both blue and purple, rare and legendary, loot as a standard reward for completion. You can read more on those types of engram, including the max power level they can grant you, in our Destiny 2 power level page, but in brief, that combination of luminous, legendary, and rare engram rewards means Nightfalls are one of a handful of endgame activities that can let you continue to raise your power to 305. Prestige Nightfalls explained. Prestige Nightfalls are essentially a hard mode on top of the hard mode that is tackling a Nightfall strike as it is. 4. Instead of a recommended 240 power, Prestige Nightfalls recommend you have at least 300 power. If you're struggling to get there, take a look at our Destiny 2 power level grinding guide. Whilst there are also a couple of other conditions, the time pressure is greater, enemies are even tougher, and you also can't change your loadout once the Nightfall starts, meaning careful planning is required. If you're looking into taking these on, then good luck. And if you manage to finish it, you get a special aura until the next reset. View image on Twitter. View image on Twitter. Follow Gigs at T1 Gigs. We completed the Prestige Nightfall. 4:39 p.m., September 9, 2017. 48 replies, 122 retweets, 1,263 likes. Twitter ads, info and privacy. Destiny 2 Nightfall, Pyramidion tips, Timewarp, 0 Hour and Torrent explained, and how to beat the final boss. This week's Nightfall is the Pyramidion strike, with modifiers for Timewarp, 0 Hour and Torrent. Before we dive into specific the Pyramidion tips, here's a quick explainer for those modes. Modifier Torrent. This vastly increases the recharge rate of your grenades and glass ability, allowing you to use them far more frequently than usual. Pretty useful, right? Timewarp 0 Hour. Unlike other Timewarp modifiers, there is no way to top up your countdown clock. In other ways, that means the time you start with is all you have. It is at least one less thing to worry about. Nightfall, the Pyramidion tips. With those out of the way, here's our advice for how to work your way through this week's tricky Nightfall. Spam grenades. With the Torrent modifier, you can throw these almost without any cooldown. With the right grenades, such as those that do damage from where they land, you can clear both individual and groups of enemies with ease. It's often more effective than using your weapons, especially if you can throw a grenade, dive into cover for a few moments to recharge, and repeat. Don't forget your class ability. These also recharge quicker, and with the right subclass this can really come in handy. we used the Hunter's Night Stalker subclass, Void, which allows you to turn invisible using a grenade. With this, we could stay almost always invisible throughout the nightfall, perfect for reviving teammates or capturing the many gates you have to wait at. This week, Void is very useful. You'll be up against a mix of Vex and Taken, which seem to lean on Void as their shield of choice. Having it on standby, or as you grenade type if possible, will see you clear some sections quicker. But as always, a mixture of all three on you, or between your team, will see you covered. Don't be careless around the lasers. Between gates are corridors filled with white lasers, usually alternating positions. Touching them will kill you, and while in a normal attempt that's not so much of an issue, between being on the clock and your slower than usual revive time, failing these will seriously put you behind. Speed through sections wherever you can. As with any strike, there are portions where you can sprint past enemies with no consequence. These are usually between gates. That said, as mentioned above, be careful around lasers and keep an eye on your objective marker to know the sections you need to open gates and or clear enemies before you can progress. Nightfall, the Pyramidion boss tips. The boss fight is predictably tricky in this Nightfall, but here are some tips that should help you through it. Aim for around 7 minutes for the last fight. It sounds like a lot, but halfway through the difficulty increases significantly, which can make life difficult. Go invisible on the gates if you can. With the right class, such as Hunter Night Stalker, you can individually or together become invisible. This allows you to open the gates and drop the shield of the boss without worrying too much about the enemies around you. Halfway through, the boss will roam the area. This is when things get difficult, as the arena will be flooded with enemies and it'll be harder to find cover points. There are small walls you can duck behind for cover, otherwise it's a case of keeping on top of enemies. Your grenades here will really help, and shooting the boss wherever possible. How to unlock Nightfall in Destiny 2. Before you unlock Nightfall Strikes, you first need to unlock Strikes, defeat 2 of them, and reach power level 230. So, first you need to complete the story mission Fury and speak to Zavala. Unlocking Strikes is an option from your director. That unlocks the Strikes milestone, which requires you to complete any 2 strikes from the roster. You can do that just by selecting it from the director and diving into the playlist. After that, check back in with Zavala for your reward, and the Nightfall milestone will appear in your Milestones tab. From there, you'll see that you need to reach power level 230 or above. 2. Once you hit that power level, go talk to Zavala again, and he'll unlock Nightfalls for you. Access them from the strike section of the in-game director, and you're ready to go, or at least, you are in theory. We have a tips for you below before you dive in. Destiny 2 Nightfall Modifiers and Nightfall Timewarps explained. The Nightfall Strike changes each week after the Tuesday reset, and with it comes a change in the various modifiers and time warps that help or hinder your progress. Nightfall Modifiers. Prism. Prism is a new way of using burns, which back in the first Destiny were a fixed damage type, arc, void, or solar, which did both additional damage to enemies and caused you to take additional damage of that type. Now, under Prism, they rotate it periodically during the Nightfall Strike, displaying what's active on the bottom left of the screen. Mastering the use of that damage boost will play a big part in your success. Attrition. Health and shield regeneration is severely hampered. Defeat enemies to create wells of light that can restore health and charge your super. These act and appear in a very similar way to orbs of light that are generated from using supers. Momentum, health and shield regeneration is disabled when standing, so you must sprint to replenish them. Torrent, this vastly increases the recharge rate of your grenades and class ability. Nightfall Time Warps, killing time. Killing enemies will add a small amount of time back onto the countdown timer, giving you a greater chance of completing the Nightfall or hitting any time-based Nightfall challenges. If you're finding yourself consistently low on time and can't get through the strike any faster, Try quickly killing a few more enemies with things like grenades and supers on your way. Rings. Jumping through the glowing rings you find along your path adds 30 seconds onto your timer. Once you trigger the first ring, more will appear, and you will have a minute or so to get as many as you can before they expire, so only activate when you're ready. Anomalies. Anomalies are clusters of energy that, when shot, will increase your timer. They tend to appear tucked around the sides of objects, low down off the edges of walkable areas, and high up in the corners. They glow blue, making them a little easier to spot from a distance. Get into a habit of looking behind you in each area, as they like to tuck them away in places you'd miss without turning back, and try to learn their placements if you are running a second time. 0 hour. Unlike other Timewarp modifiers, there is no way to top up your countdown clock. In other ways, that means the time you start with is all you have. Destiny 2 Guide, Story Walkthrough. Class changes, exotics, leveling and more explained. Destiny 2 Guide, Story Walkthrough. Want more help? Our Destiny 2 Guide and Walkthrough covers everything to get you up to speed. Elsewhere, we have articles on how to beat this week's Pyramidion Nightfall, find the latest treasure map locations and descriptions of the new prestige raid differences, plus other activities including lost sectors, heroic public events, and flashpoints on EDS, Titan, Nessus, and EO. We also explain how to power level to the 265, 300 and 305 power caps, as well as what to spend Glimmer on, how to join clans and how mods, infusion, and engrams and legendary shards work, a Destiny 2 exotics list, available ornaments, trials of the 9 and the weekly reset, how to unlock classes and subclasses, and how to complete the Destiny 2 raid. Finally, for those waiting for it, here are details of the Destiny 2 launch time on PC.